Welcome back to Exotic Car Playplace, everybody. Thanks for joining in again today. And what do we have behind me? That is my BMW 335i with the N54 engine. And I'm going to show you how to change the oil filter housing gasket if you yourself as well have possibly oil, antifreeze, or just a general collection of mess in front of the engine, around the pulleys, or in the back of the radiator. There's a good chance this is your issue, and it is a common failure point on these cars. So be sure to hit the subscribe button if you like it at any point during the video. So let's get started. What we gotta do is we have to get this off. In order to do that, we've got to remove this and the cowling. So let's get started. This here, you flip these up. Now that comes off. Throw that to the side. Now we're gonna pop these cables out of here, as well as this loom. Lift that out. That's also got a spot. Pull those back, get them out of the road. Now this, straight back, just like that. Throw that out. Then let's get a flat blade. And if you look up in here, next, you want to give this thing a twist, 90 degrees, pull it out. I've got this one, I see it's tie wrap. Normally this clip just comes out of the clip. But what we'll do is we'll pull back this rubber grommet, reach back over here, pull on that. And then we pull this out, throw that away. This normally has a bolt in here, but I see that's missing from somebody in the past. Pull this back out of the road, leave that to the side for now. Let's do it over there now. We've got to remove this other side. See, there's nothing plugged in here. That may be for an extra option this car doesn't have. But let's pull this back. And again, pull that. Next, you want to pull this crappy cable out of here, lift it off of there, and make sure it's clear of this. Pull this back as well. Cowling here. So there's a bunch of bolts. We have one here, 8mm. And take this big piece of junk out and throw that away. Side, there should be one identical to this over there. Problem is it's missing, so we'll take this one out. It's also 8mm. Take that. Then you've got these tabs. Pull that garbage back. Another one on this corner. Pull that back. See this rubber grommet, you want to make sure you give it some clearance. Lift, lift, and pull back. So the next thing is you want to take 1, 2, 3, 4 bolts out of there. Let's start with a 5mm Allen key head. And then we get this one buried way down in there. Now you got to be careful that you don't drop it, so I'm going to use one of these and pull it out nice and easy. I've already loosened it off. Get rid of this junk. Next, we want to pull this center plug out. Pull that out, give it a twist. And then there's a bolt in here, and there's a bolt over here for these bars. We want to pull these bolts and get those bars out of there. First, you want to use an E14 Torx socket, just like the one here, and we're going to crack this loose. The driver's side of the car, move over here. Don't lose any of these washers, very, very important. And for this center bolt, we're going to use an E18 Torx, just like that. With a breaker bar, it's going to be a little stiffer than the other ones. Spin that out now. Voila. Pull this out. And pull this out. Slot it in, goes in. Then what we're going to do next, we're going to pull this flange, that's the air inlet that would normally go through the air box, but the air box has been retrofitted on this car, so it's normally quite large, but we've got a different scenario. Either way, you need to take these out. Pull those out. We're going to pry these. Gone. Just like that. Screw there and a screw there. And those are actually T20s. So you'll need a torque socket or torque driver like this. And then we'll screw those. And then we'll do the other side. Same thing. T20. Take this garbage out, throw that away, pull him forward, lift up, and then pull him back. Now he's clear. Throw him away. So next you're going to want to remove these pipes, and we're on a 6mm socket, or hose clamp if you will. We've got to loosen this off, and there's two of them. So we'll start with this one. And then there's this other one back here. And even if you have the other standard air, and this other one back here. So even if you have a standard air box, these are still going to be applicable. You still have to undo these to get the regular air box out of the way. So most of these steps are still applied. This back. Get this line out of the way. Let's give that a squeeze. There. Pull him out of the road. There you go. There's a nipple in there, so you gotta be very careful not to snap that off. So you can see with my car, since I've got the aluminum charge pipe, this fitting assembly is a little different. On the factory, it actually has a pin. You pull that out, you drop the pipe down. On mine, I actually have to undo a hose clamp. So I'm gonna do a 10mm hose clamp on this installation. So I'm gonna back that out. Pull this washer back, loosen up that clamp. Now hopefully it gives enough. And we should have enough slack there to pull that away. But before this pulls away, we have to undo this. We have to undo this holder here because that's holding the pipe from moving around. So I've got to undo this. I've got an Allen key head on this installation. That's just what they have here. And it's a slotted fitting here, as you can see. I'll back that off. Now you see how it just wants to move naturally. So I'm going to undo the other fitting at the other end of the aluminum charge pipe and just be able to move it away so I can pull it out here partially so that it's not holding up at the opposite end at the intake manifold. You don't want the intake manifold held up. I need to give it some slack. So I'm going to back this end off. So I pulled the aluminum charge pipe out of the other end and the intake manifold end, and I'll just drop it down. I won't remove it entirely because there's some cabling there, wiring and hoses going to it. So I'm just going to leave that alone for now. Now that should free up the space for this. Next, we have to take this antifreeze line, this upper rad hose. We have to pull that off. Now you're going to dump some. I've got another way to catch some of this down below the car, but you should put some kind of rags or material or a catch pan to catch some of that. So anyhow, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pull this out. And then you want to pry this away so it comes out and it's going to dump a bunch of antifreeze. So light pry, you don't want to, you've got to be careful, it's plastic. like everything else in these engines. Give a little pry, and it's going to blow out. There you go. With some antifreeze. This is where it's important to make sure that you put some means to catch it down below. Okay, next let's unplug the sensor from on top of the filter housing. Then what we need is another bolt under here holds these two lines, these cooler lines, onto the cooler. So we want to back that off, and there's going to be a little bit of oil, so you want a means or a rag or something to take that, and then you're going to set this off to the side so it's out of the road. So we're going to loosen that off. Spin it out by hand the rest of the way. Take that bolt and washer out of here, and by the way, it took a 13mm socket to do this, and probably better to use a 1/4" drive. It's a lot easier in there. So we got that out. Then we're going to push the lines down, and I'm going to use a bag here to catch it because there's always a little bit of oil that comes out of this thing. And we're going to set that off to the side. Okay, so there's 3 bolts to release this thing now. There's 1 bolt under here, which is actually bolted backwards. Now you should be using a Torx, or if you don't want to use it, or if you don't want to use the Torx because it's a special order and it's kind of a unique wrench, you could either pull this hose off. There's 2 10mm bolts, pull that back. Be careful because this is plastic, fragile, and it may break in your hands as well. You'll need a new O-ring if you take that off. So that's a bit of a risk, or use that Torx. But what I've found, I know it's the wrong tool for the job, but it is what it is and it works. And I'm going to say it's a 5/8 combination wrench, is just the perfect size to get down in here and reach that 1 bolt. And it's a tight fit too, so it fits just right. And it's a bit of a slow process because you're walking it out of there. However, it's better than the alternatives. Saves you by the time you drive to the hardware store, if they even have that special Torx wrench, you've got this bolt out. So before I finish off all these bolts, which there's that small one I showed you below, there's this one, which is the longest one, and then there's a medium-sized bolt that's tucked underneath, and you can't even see it. It's underneath the intake manifold, and that's why we have to move this out of the way. So before we get to that, we're gonna pop these looms out of the harnesses here that you've got on the top of the manifold. We're gonna pop these out, just make room, a little extra room to work. Pop that up, pull that sensor. Oh, look at that. We lost the snap. Typical kind of plastic issues that you get on these cars at times. So I'll have to put that in and make sure it's secure later. The next plan is we've got a vacuum line over here on the bottom edge of the intake manifold. We want to pry that off. I'm going to try to give that a little pry and get it started. Be careful you don't break more parts in here. You can always cut the edge of the vacuum line as well. Notch it with a knife so it slides off a little easier, but just going to pry this back. There we go. Undid that. Okay, so the O2 sensors, what we're going to do is take them out. Okay, we're going to pull the oxygen sensors out of the harnesses. And then what you got to do is you got to give this a squeeze and a pull, okay? We're going to pull it back, and we'll do the same thing with this one here. Squeeze that back end of this tab so it lifts up the front. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to route these down here. Let's pull them back a little bit just so they're out of the way of the manifold. There we go. It's pretty obvious. The short goes to short, long to long. Just lay those off to the side. And we also have, again, the oil sensor. So we'll put that up to the side and out of the way. Now we also have these 2 vacuum lines that come down into here. We're going to see if we can work around that. I think we possibly can. So the next step is let's start removing these bolts off of the intake manifold, and then we can pull that off. Hopefully change the gaskets because we bought a new O-ring set. I think it's always imperative if you're taking equipment apart, change everything while you're in there. What you'll find is 6 nuts, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and they're staggered, and then there's a bolt on the far end here. So you've got to undo all of those very carefully. Please don't drop any of them down in the engine compartment. So let's undo that. Be careful with these vacuum lines. I opted not to remove them, but there's always a risk in breaking something because of the plastic fittings, T-fittings and such. Start undoing the nuts. Let's crack them all loose for now. Okay, so next thing, let's take the filter housing cover off. Okay. Make sure we've got some rags to catch some of the mess. I'm going to get rid of that filter, clean the housing, clean all of that inside there, get it ready for removal. But we're just going to simply slide the manifold over and get access to the bolt to remove the housing for this. We just lifted this up just enough off the studs to hopefully expose that bolt down here. And that's the one, that's the ugly one. And the reason why you have to remove the intake manifold. So we're going to spin this out. And I'm going to back this one out. This one's the longest. Spin this one all the way back. You can see the longest bolt of the bunch. Pull this out. There we go, medium-sized bolt. I'm just going to slowly walk this one out. This might take a little while. There we are, and that bolt. And there we have it. So we're going to change this gasket here. I suspect it's leaking at the bottom. It looks a little crusty at the bottom there. Even feels a bit rough, so I guess it's hard to say for sure, but I was suspecting an issue with this gasket. It looks quite flattened out in this area here too. Hence the extra oil in the back here that looks like it's been sprayed around for a while. Okay, so we're going to clean this area here, a little bit of parts cleaner. This stuff works great, I'm not going to lie. Really, really good stuff. Okay, so I was able to pull the manifold far enough away without messing around with the electrical connections, the hoses at the back of the manifold. It's still a little bit tight, but I'm thinking if I use a little pick like this, and I've got the O-rings that are actually replaced, so sold as a set, and here's the part number. If you need to know, there they are. I'm gonna try to pick away at those, pull them out, and replace them with brand new O-rings for the intake manifold. So let's go. One down, take the second one out. Old and kind of hard, a little brittle. So take a new one like this, nice and smooth. We're gonna place it into the slot. Okay, second one's in. So it's all prepped and cleaned. You can see it looks like a thing of beauty. I ripped the old gasket out of there, or the O-ring, if you will. But I didn't change this one because I did that earlier this year, and that one didn't look like it was a problem. Like I said, it had been done previous. So let's prepare this and put the new one in. So pressed into place, and now we're going to mount this to the engine block. Just start this loosely for now. Just get this one hand turned. Get the other one in here, which is a bit tight. And then the one down under here. Get it started. That's the key, is to start them all first. So let's start this one down here. Okay, so now we move to this one, and we move to this one. And then we tighten up down here. That's it. Okay, so now that I got that started, I've got that bolt done up and the housing is torqued up. That's fine. So we're gonna try to walk this thing in here now. Got the new gaskets and O-rings on the intake manifold. Now it looks like it's fully seated. Then we can start putting the nuts and bolts. Bolt in here, start putting the nuts on. And the one way at the back, don't want to forget him. You don't torque that properly, I have a boost leak back there. Get these spun on for now, hand by hand. And one more down in here. So we're gonna use the 11mm socket, and we're gonna just snug them down very lightly for starters. So we're gonna have to torque it after. Start in the middle, go back and forth. Come back up here for the bolt. Now, so we're going to torque these bolts and nuts to about 15 nanometers or about 11 pound-feet of torque. We're going to plug in the sensor back here. There we go. Going to connect up the oil filter sensor. That. Then we are going to also route oxygen sensors. Get that back down there. Snap together. tuck that underneath there and route it all to this here. And then these, put that back in there. Loom in there. Tucked away nice and neat. There we go. So we'll make sure that that snap ring is back into place, and we'll push this on. Give it a tug. That's in. There we go. That's in place. Okay, so we got to make sure we route this vacuum line that goes to the blow-off valve. Make sure we route that up into the intake manifold. There's a little nipple down here. Make sure we get that plugged on all the way. Okay, that's on. Now, I'm going to turn this blow-off valve and aluminum charge pipe. Bring the silicone hose up to the throttle body. There we go, slide that in all the way. The hose clamp, make sure we get that snug right to the end. And we'll tighten that down. So I use a 10 mil deep on this. Snug it up. You want pretty decent tension on there because this is your boost. Pressure goes through here. And now we got to tighten up the other end of the aluminum charge pipe over here. Okay, we got to snug this. This is just a bracket to hold the charge pipe to the chassis. There we go. Snug. There. Now this is solidly bolted on both ends. Okay, so you'll notice there's 3 little plugs here. Those fit neatly on these little standoffs right here. So we just got to align all that. Let's set that neatly down and this. And then there you go, snaps into place. And next we got to get the air box. Okay, so we're going to start on this end here first. We're going to get it into this hose, into this intake pipe. Try anyway. Okay, we got that in. We'll tighten that up in a moment. And so now we got to get this end in. Make sure this slides into that hose. Oh, okay, we got that. Now, we're going to put these hose clamps, tighten them up. They don't need to be over torqued. Okay, so we're going to snug this muzzle start on this end. Snug it down, and again, remember, it doesn't need to be over torqued because this is fresh air. This is suction air. It doesn't have a lot of pressure behind it. And so all you need to do is just get a good snug fit, not over torque. Snug, and then the same over here. Okay. Again, we don't need over torque, but we'll give it a good snug. This way, if I just use a nut driver, it ensures that we don't go too crazy with the torque. It's just normal air suck through here. Okay, next we got to get the bolt and bolt this up. Okay, now let's see if we can get this bolt. There's a bolt that belongs down in here. Get that started. Okay, now we'll wrench that in. Nothing too solid, it just needs to be held together. Okay, so we'll re-put this vacuum line back on there. Snaps together just like so. That's it. Okay, so give this a quick little wipe here. You want to try to put new O-rings on here if you can. I had a look at these. They seem to be okay, but I guess time will tell. You got the O-rings both on there. Then we're going to run that 13 mil bolt up between the two. We're going to sit this up, pull those lines up into the base, and try to get this started. Okay, let's get this there. There. Let's get the socket in here. Again, as I said, it's 13 millimeter. So while we're doing this, we might as well make sure we just go ahead and change the oil. So I'm going to pull the filter housing out. Of course, with that, got to take the big old O-ring off of here, the old one. Also take off, there's another replacement ring that goes on the end here. We'll make sure we change that. Peel that off too. Throw that out. And be sure. Still a little residual oil here. I like to pre-lube everything. There we go, we got that little green ring on there. And then we'll put a brand new in box with the man filter. We'll put that nice and greased so it slides on easier. We'll put that into that gap. There we go. So that's all prepped. Put that on there. Put that in there first. Now we're going to slide that in there and start to turn that into place. There we go. Tight. New filter, new seals. This is all resealed. I'm just going to drop the oil, put all this back together, do a quick oil change, and I'll let you know. So everybody, I hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you found it helpful. And if you did and you enjoy it, be sure to hit the subscribe button down below and drop me a line. I'd love to hear what your comments are. Also, have you had any issues or possibly things that you'd like to see done on the N54 engine? Just drop me a line. We'll talk to you real soon. Bye-bye.